Hi everyone, thanks for clicking on this video. So today we're going to be looking at what are, in my opinion, the 3 best seasons to come out of Fortnite. Now my previous video was on the 3 worst seasons, so if you haven't seen that, please go check it out after this video. And if you do enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. It helps me out a ton, and it helps me know that you like Fortnite content, and I'll keep giving it to you. So before we head straight into it, I just want to let you all know that this is majorly my opinion, but I'm also getting some little things like community feedback from a actual website. So some of these are based on community, sort of like how the overall community reacts to the season, whether it's a popular season, but it's 90% my opinion and then 10% just sort of considering what the fan base of these games have said. So let's go straight into my number 1. And this one I was debating whether or not to put it in the 3rd spot, but ultimately I decided to because it's probably the season I've actually played the most overall, and that's Chapter 5 Season 1. What a way to start off, right? Pretty controversial. I know a lot of people won't agree that this is one of the best seasons, but I think it was definitely worth talking about. So after the success of Fortnite OG, it was pretty likely that there was going to be a massive drop-off in players, and there still was, but not as big as I was expecting, and probably not as big as Epic was expecting. When they do sort of big events, people usually drop off after the start of a season because they're just not interested. Now, I decided to stick around this time. I was going to leave the game, but I thought, I'll give it a try. And I'm really happy I did because they revamped the game pretty crazily. I think they kept the game how people like it, but they also added in, like pretty big mechanics that I think make the game better. Things like medallions, the mod benches, like revamped jumping and stuff like that helped the game out a lot, in my opinion. I also think that the battle pass for the season was pretty solid, at least in comparison to the current battle pass. I think the last one was pretty damn good, and it was pretty fun working through it. Not to say the current battle pass isn't good, but I do think it's relatively weak in comparison. This season to me just offered a whole bunch. It was just very fun to play, the new gameplay and the new map as well. I think the map was pretty solid. I do wish they had changed it a little more for the current season we're in now, but overall I think that this map laid a pretty good foundation for the rest of this chapter. And overall I think the main thing that is so good about this chapter, aside from the gameplay, I think that the story, I always like to mention that in these videos, the story is pretty solid. It's nothing amazing, like we're not expecting that from Fortnite, I don't think, as of now, but it's a very solid story. I think it's pretty interesting. Again, the skins, I love them. And not to mention, this season added so much new content. Like, obviously we have Battle Royale, but now we have, rocket racing and the festival and Lego Fortnite. They've added a whole bunch to the game, and it's so much more fun, and there's way more to do now. You can spend hours and hours on this game now. You already could, but now you could spend a whole day probably on this game because there are so many ways to level up now and progress through the battle pass. So ultimately, great season, awesome new additions with, new free modes, cool skins, good map, and that is why I thought I'd put it in the 3rd place. So now, coming in second is Chapter 1, Season 3. Now, this one is actually, I would say majority from community feedback instead of my personal my personal experience and opinion of the series. Now, I didn't play this season much because in comparison to a lot of you watching, I'm sure, I started playing relatively late. I didn't start playing till around Season 6, so I haven't played this season that much, but I did play it with my friends a little bit, and I will say that this season is one of the most iconic. It didn't add some of the most iconic locations, but I think that the overall map in this season is maybe the best that the whole game has ever seen in any season. I think that the map is amazing. I think the battle pass was a big step up from the previous season. Not to call that one bad, they both have very rare skins in them, but I think this season was pretty cool and pretty notable for having John Wick in the battle pass. And a lot of the skins here are just very iconic and very different from what we're getting now and anything that came before. Not that there was much before, but the skins just felt very iconic, very different, very unique, and I feel like they just lit up the game in a different way, sort of in a way you can't really describe. So ultimately, the reason I put it in number 2 is the community seems to love it a lot, and from my sort of minimal experience, I really enjoyed the season, and I think that it's in the top 5 most iconic seasons that Fortnite has ever had, and that is why I decided to put it here. Alright, so before we head into the number 1 spot, I wanted to look at a couple of honorable mentions, some of the seasons that I didn't mention, but are either very popular with the fan base or I just really love personally. So let's look at the actual website here. So from the website, the most loved ones are Chapter 2 Season 4, Chapter 1 Season 5, and Chapter 1 Season 7. So as you can see, Chapter 1 was pretty popular. Now, I'll briefly talk about all of these, and then I'll talk about my personal honorable mention. So the Chapter 2 Season 4 season was Marvel, so that makes sense. Big fan base of Marvel, obviously collaboration with Fortnite, that's going to do well. Now with Chapter 1 Season 5 and Chapter 1 Season 7, I'm going to assume that, again, this is when I first started playing the game, these 2 seasons, so I don't really remember much from them, but I'm guessing it's to do with things like map changes to the game, although I will remember Chapter 7 was pretty, I would say 50-50 due to planes being introduced and the Infinity Blade. Thank you to Beyond, one of my viewers who reminded me of that in the worst seasons. I forgot to mention the Infinity Blade. That thing kind of sucked. It was very cool, but it sucked. And with Chapter 5, that was just before I started playing, but I'm pretty sure it had a pretty good battle pass and a pretty solid map, so that's probably why they are so loved. Now, my personal honorable mention is the Fortnite OG season. This one is my actual favorite season of all time, but I didn't include it because I didn't know whether to count it as an actual season, because it technically wasn't one. Like, it wasn't a Chapter 4 season, whatever. It was its own separate thing. It felt like a little thank you to the fans of Epic Games while they were working on Chapter 5. So I didn't count it because of that. Just a technicality, basically. I don't know if it counts as a season, but I love the map. The battle pass was great. Overall, an amazing season. And I have made a video on why it's so good, so if you haven't, please check that out. But now for the best season, and this is my opinion as well as a whole bunch of the community according to this website, is Chapter 2 Season 2. So this season is pretty strong. Now, a thing to discuss is the map. I always discuss the map. The map is awesome. I personally really like the map in this season. I really like the story that they were going with here, this ties to the map as well. The locations and stuff, I have a lot of really good memories with this season. Arguably one of the best battle passes to come out of the game as well. Overall, just a very strong season, and one that I remember having a ton of fun with. So if you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more Fortnite videos. It helps me out a ton. I really appreciate you watching it to the end, and I hope you have a great day. Also, as of recording, it's actually Easter, so at least for me. So I hope you all have a great Easter, have an amazing day, and hopefully I'll have a new video up tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.